Hello kids, I'm Officer Rodriguez with the City of Bethlehem Police Department, and today Officer Stokes and I, we're going to be reading to you a book about bike safety with Curious George.
And hi boys and girls, I'm Officer Stokes with Lehigh Police Department, and like Officer Rodriguez said, we're going to teach you about bike safety with Curious George and how he rides that bike.
Hello boys and girls, we're going to read Curious George Rides a Bike. I hope you enjoy the book. This is George. He lived with his friend, the man with the yellow hat. He was a good little monkey and always very curious. This morning, George was curious the moment he woke up because he knew it was a special day. At breakfast, George's friend said, "Today we're going to celebrate because just 3 years ago this day, I brought you home with me from the jungle. So tonight, I will take you to the animal show. But first, I have to surprise you." He took George out to the yard where a big box was standing. George was very curious. Out of the box came a bicycle. George was delighted. That's what he had always wanted. He knew how to ride a bicycle, but he had never had one of his own. "I must go now," said the man, "but I'll be back in time for the show. Be careful with your new bike and keep close to your house while I'm gone."
George could ride a bike very well. He could even do all sorts of tricks. Monkeys are good at that. For instance, he could ride this way with both hands off the handlebars. Look at him riding his bike with his hands off. Not safe. He also could ride this way like a cowboy, wild bronco. He also could ride backwards, but after a while George got tired of doing tricks and went out into the street. The newsboy was just passing by with a big bag full of papers. "It's a fine bike you have there," he said to George. "How would you like to help me deliver papers?" He handed George a bag, told him to do one side of the street first, then turn back and do the other side. George was very proud as he rode off with his bag. See him helping the delivery guy deliver papers. He started to deliver papers on one side of the street. As he had been told, when he came to the last house, he saw a little river in the distance. George was curious. He wanted to know what the river was like. So for instance, he turned back, delivered the rest of the papers, he just went on. There was a lot to see at the river. A man fishing from the bridge. A duck family was paddling downstream. 2 boys were playing with their boats. George would have liked to stop and look at the boats, but he was afraid that the boys might find out he had not delivered all the papers. So he rode on. While riding along, George kept thinking of the boats all the time. It would be such fun to have a boat, but how could I get one? He thought and he thought. And then he had an idea. He got back off the bike, took a newspaper out of his bag and began to fold it. First he folded it down the corners like this. Looks like he was kind of making an airplane there, but we know what he's making. Then he folded both edges up, brought the ends up together, flattened it sideways. Then he turned one corner up, then one corner, another corner. Again brought the ends together and flattened it sideways. Then he gently pulled up the ends to open, and there it was, George's boat. Now the moment had come to launch the boat. Would it float? It did! So George decided to make some more boats. Finally, he had used up all the papers and had to make many more boats that could not count them. A whole fleet. Watching his fleet sail down the river, George felt like an admiral. But watching his fleet, he forgot to watch where he was going.
Suddenly, there was a terrible jolt. The bicycle had hit a rock and George flew off the seat, head first.
Ouch.
Luckily, George was not hurt, but the front wheel of the bicycle was all out of shape and the tire was blown out. George tried to ride the bicycle, but of course it wouldn't go. So he started carrying it, but it soon got too heavy. George did not know what to do. His new bike was spoiled. The newspapers were gone. He wished he had listened to his friend and kept close to the house. Now he's just stood there and cried. Suddenly his face brightened. Why? He had forgotten that he could ride on one wheel. He tried it and it worked. He had hardly started out again when he saw something he had never seen before. Rolling toward him came an enormous tractor with a huge trailer behind it. Looking out of the trailer were all sorts of animals. To George, it looked like a zoo on wheels. The tractor stopped and two men jumped out. "Well, well," said one of the men, "a little monkey who can ride a bike, bronco fashion. We can use you in the animal show tonight. I am the director of the show, and this is Bob. He can straighten your wheel and fix the flat in no time, and then we'll take you along to the place where the show is going to be." So the three of them got into the cab and drove off. "Maybe you can play a fanfare while you ride your bike in the show," the director said. "I have to bugle for you right here, and later on you'll get a green coat and a cap just like Bob." On the show grounds, everybody was busy getting things ready for the show. "I must do some work now," said the director. "Meanwhile, you may have to look around and get acquainted with all the animals, but you must not feed them, especially the ostrich, because he will eat anything and might get very sick afterwards." George was curious. Would the ostrich really eat anything? He wouldn't eat a bugle, or would he? George went a little closer to the cage, and before he knew it, the ostrich had snatched the bugle and tried to swallow it. But a bugle is hard to swallow, even for an ostrich. It got stuck in his throat. Funny sounds came out of the bugle as the ostrich, struggling with it, all blue in the face. George was frightened. Fortunately, the men had heard the noise. They came rushing to the cage and got the bugle out of the ostrich's throat just in time. The director was very angry with George. "We cannot use little monkeys who don't do as they're told," he said. "Of course you cannot take part in the show now. We will have to send you home." George had to sit on a bench all by himself, and nobody even looked at him. He was terribly sorry for what he had done, but now it was too late. He had spoiled everything.
Meanwhile, the ostrich always was hungry. He had got a hold of a string dangling near his cage. This happened to be the string which had the door to the cage of the baby bear. The ostrich nibbled at it. The door opened. The baby bear got out. He ran fast away, as fast as he could, and made a straight for the high tree near the camp. Nobody had seen it but George, and George was not supposed to leave his bench. But this was an emergency, so he jumped up, grabbed the bugle, blew it as loud as he could. Then he rushed to his bicycle. The men had heard the alarm and thought at first that George had been naughty again. But when they saw the empty cage and the ostrich nibbling at the string, they knew what happened. George raced toward the tree, far ahead of the men. But now the bear had climbed quite high. And this was dangerous, because the little bear can climb up a tree easily, but coming down, is much harder. They may fall, they may get hurt. The men worried they didn't know how to get him down safely, but George had his plan. With a bag over the shoulder, he went up the tree fast as only a monkey can, and when he reached the baby bear, he put him in the bag and carefully let him down so that the men could safely catch him. Everybody cheered when George had come down from the tree. "You are a brave little monkey," said the director. "You saved the baby bear's life. Now you're going to get a coat, black of course, and you may ride your bike and play the bugle in the show." Finally, the show was on, and how surprised they were right in the middle of it. And also the man. Whole town had come to see it, to discover George on his bike. The newsboy was there too, with his yellow hat. Who had been looking for George everywhere and was happy to have found him at last. The newsboy was glad to have his bag again. The people from the other side of the street, whose paper George had made into boats, were not angry with him anymore. When the time had come for George to say goodbye, the director let him keep the coat and the cap and the bugle. And then George and his friends got into the car and went home. And that's the end of the book. So boys and girls, Officer Rodriguez and I, we want you to ride your bike safely on the street. We want you to ride with mom and dad. We want you to make sure that you're wearing helmets to protect your head, because you don't want to end up with like George, who rides his bike and hit a rock and fell over his handlebars. We want you to follow the rules of the road.
More importantly, kids, we want you to be safe. And I hope you enjoyed the book reading, and just be safe out there when you're riding your bikes.
We both thank you. Be safe.
Bye-bye.
And enjoy.
Hi everyone, my name is Erica Clymer, and I am the author and illustrator of The Great Garden Escape. I grew up around Bethlehem, so I'm super excited to be reading one of my books to you today. This is actually my third book that I wrote and illustrated. The first one is called Finn's Fun Fish Adventure, and that story was inspired by a book I wrote when I was little. And as a kid, I loved to draw and I loved to create my own stories. And so a few years ago, my mom handed me a box of stories that I created when I was little, and I decided to turn that story that I made when I was little into a real book. And that's how I got started as an author and an illustrator. So the book today, my third book, The Great Garden Escape, is actually being featured on 3 story walks in Bethlehem, PA. The first one is at the Bethlehem Public Library, the second at Rose Garden Park, and the third at Sand Island Park. If you visit the story walks in person, you can grab a passport from the first podium of the story walk, solve the riddle on the back of the card, and then bring this card to the farm stand on July 27th for a free fresh fruit or vegetable of the week. So the story walk will be available from July 21st to July 27th. And I hear the fruit or vegetable that week might be one of the items you see on the front cover of my book. So let's get started reading The Great Garden Escape. For this book, I wanted to create a story that got children excited to learn about fruits and vegetables. And there are actually clues throughout this book that I hope you will help me solve as we read along. The Great Garden Escape by me, Erica L. Clymer. The sun beams down in Fruit Garden on this splendid day. Sally Strawberry and Billy Blueberry are ready to play. The best friends run through sprinklers on Raspberry Ridge. They climb Lime Hill and hop over Blackberry Bridge. Sally and Billy soon reach Mango Mountainside. The pair race to ride on the watermelon slide. Down they go, zooming faster and faster. Sally starts to worry. This might be a disaster. At the bottom, Billy yells, "I can't stop!" The 2 berries fly over Cherry Cliff Drop. They land in a pile of dirt down below. in a place where all the vegetables grow. That was quite the fall they suddenly hear. Sally and Billy see a squash standing near. "How do we get home to Fruit Garden?" asks Sally. The squash replies, "Through a secret gate in the valley." There are 10 clues that will show you the way. Find and solve them by the end of today. The garden gate locks at sunset you see. Hurry, clue 1 swings over there in that tree. They thank the squash and to the tree they run. Sally and Billy read clue number 1. Clue number 1 says, "We look like little trees, but instead of leaves, our florets blow in the breeze." Florets, what could that be? Sally and Billy say broccoli, and broccoli is correct. The best friends skip past Radish Region's lot to investigate the broccoli growing spot. They search throughout broccoli boondocks and find clue 2 beneath a pile of rocks. Clue 2 says, "If you come to our home, you won't know we're around. Our orange bodies grow tall, just below the ground." Orange bodies in the ground. What could that be? Sally and Billy say carrots. Carrots are correct. Sally and Billy zip by the Turnip Town scenery on a mission to inspect Carrot County's greenery. They hop a carrot plant only to see a little ant carrying clue number 3. Clue number 3 says, "You may call us spuds if you wish, but we'll be mashed, baked, or fried, sitting on your dish." Spuds. What could that be? Sally and Billy say potatoes. Potatoes are correct. Through the spears of asparagus terrain they go to arrive on the grounds of Potato Plateau. Sally and Billy see clue 4 and squirm. It's surrounded by a giant brown worm. Clue number 4 says, "To solve this riddle, put your heads together. A piece of us is light as a feather." What vegetable comes as a head and has pieces? Let's see. Lettuce. Lettuce is correct. In Brussels sprout backwoods, they cautiously tread until spotting lettuce neighborhood just up ahead. While strolling down Romaine Lane to Iceberg Pike, Sally and Billy see clue 5 riding a bright red bike. Clue 5 says, "We come together as a bunch, break us apart and you'll hear a crunch." A bunch and crunch. What could that be? Sally and Billy say celery, and celery is correct. They brush by giant leaves in Cauliflower Grove to play detectives in the land of Celery Cove. Just beyond a fallen stalk, clue 6 sits perched upon a rock. Clue 6 says, "A cozy little pod is where we reside. We're called Snap, Snow, or even Black-Eyed." A pod, snap, snow? I think that's peas. Peas are correct. The pair steps through cucumber plains with ease on their way to the teeny park of peas. Sally wonders, where could clue 7 be? "There it is," says Billy, resting below that tree. Clue 7 says, "We can be tangy and a little bit sweet, or we can be spicy and too hot to eat." What vegetables are spicy and sweet, or can be spicy and sweet? Sally and Billy say peppers. Peppers is correct. A mushroom shouts, "Where are you going at such a fast pace?" Sally calls out, "To find our next clue inside Pepper Place." Sally and Billy looked left, right, and all around. They discover clue 8 atop a dirt mound. Clue 8 says, "Our first name is a mix of yellow and blue. Our last name is shared by Pinto, too." A mix of yellow and blue. What makes yellow and blue? I think that's green. And last name Pinto. Pintos are beans. So the answer is green beans. The ears of corn look quite mystified as two berries scurry through their countryside. In green bean jungle, swinging vine to vine, Sally and Billy capture clue number 9. Clue number 9. I will not be mistaken for a yam. No sir, no ma'am, I am not a yam. What looks like a yam? I think at the grocery store, sweet potatoes are always next to yams. So I'm going to go with sweet potatoes. And that's what Sally and Billy say, and that's correct. When the two friends appear, the eggplants are aghast. Never have they ever seen berries move so fast. Down sweet potato slope they roll to find clue 10 stuck in a hole. Clue 10. Hold your nose if you get near. Our strong smell makes eyes tear. A vegetable that has a strong smell that can make your eyes tear. Let's see what Sally and Billy say. Onions. Onions are correct. Woohoo! We've solved all the clues, exclaimed Sally. The best friends high five and head for the valley. Sally and Billy climb Beet Summit's rubble. Onion Valley looks like nothing but trouble. They slowly descend into the valley and spot the gate down a dreary, dark alley. The sun has almost set and the gate is about to close. The pair runs as fast as they can while holding their nose. Sally and Billy just make it through and collapse to the ground with a phew. I'm happy to be back home, says Billy with a sigh. The best friends lay in fruit garden, staring up at the sky. The end. I hope you enjoyed the Great Garden Escape, and thank you for watching.